Here we are, baby.
Yeah, it's about that time.
It is that time. Another episode of the Mindful Warrior podcast. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. As always, I'm joined by my brother, Nate Jackson. Nate, it's been a while, man.
2 weeks, man. Two weeks.
Too long is what it's been.
Yeah, I've been jonesing.
Me too.
It's good to be back.
Very excited to be back behind the mic. We've got Jed in the house. Jed rocking the ones and twos.
Hitting the vape.
We've got Gandalf the Grey, our beautiful pit bull. We've got an exciting guest today, man. Mr. Kirk Westwood, creator of the Luck Bubble. Kirk, great to have you, man.
Eb, thank you very much, guys. Fun to be here.
It's really exciting to have you here. So I'm not even really sure where to begin here, but what I would like to say is that, Kirk, you deal in energy. You deal in a variety of areas. And why don't we get into what the Luck Bubble is, just to start?
Yeah, sure. The Luck Bubble was a phrase that I coined when I was in the Australian military. I was with a Special Forces unit. How I ended up there is a longer story, but it is literally before my deployment to Afghanistan, actually before I even finished Special Forces selection, I was stabbed in the eye with a stick that had explosives on it, or cordite, the residue from gunpowder, and ate away the cornea in my left eye. And I didn't want to get cut from selection. It's like buds, you don't want to get cut. You're close to the end after 2 years of training for it. And my team unit then went off to Afghanistan in the months that followed, and I stayed home and tried to save the eye, which I did. I'm actually documented as one of the few people to have regrown corneal tissue. Went from 60 micron thickness up to now 600 micron. And during that period of time...
How'd you do that?
By undertaking extreme rituals and practices that I didn't understand. I guess in a little bit of context, I need to tell you the story of how I ended up in the military.
Yeah, let's hear that. Let's hear that stuff. We'll get to the Luck Bubble.
Yeah, we'll get to the Luck Bubble.
So in 2000, I got sick with an illness called post-viral syndrome. And my body was eating itself up. I got down to under 100 pounds, and I was sleeping over 20 hours a day. And the doctor said I'd never get better from it. This would be my life, and I wasn't happy with that diagnosis. So I undertook rituals and practices that I didn't understand, and I got better. I didn't just get better, but I got strong. But the shaman and medicine people that I saw would say the same thing about that I had the gift of vision, and I needed to work on that my energy was killing me, and I needed to understand this. So I took heed and studied with a master of intuition for over a decade.
This was in Australia?
This is in Australia and other parts of the world as well. And I just learned how to read people and read situations, because I thought everybody could see what I saw. So I worked on that and became very, very good at it. But the only reason I wanted to do that was to help myself become a better athlete or a better performer. And I didn't want to heal people, but people kept on coming to me to understand why they do what they do, why they're causing the illness. Not what the illness is, but why do I create this illness? And it was very obvious to me. But I kept on running away from it. I went to the outback Australia. I was a jackaroo, which is kind of like a cowboy. And then I was an adventure guide, rafting rivers. And then I did the ultimate runaway, and I joined the military. And I had some friends who were SAS in Australia, and they had used my skills to help them solve some problems. So at the age of 35, I entered into a commando unit with a special inclusion to see how I could help them solve problems. Trained for a couple of years after selection. We start with about 800-odd guys, end up with about 100 in the last phase, and we probably end up with about 20 who pass in the end, similar to your buds or your SEALs. And when I got stabbed in the eye, the only thing I could focus on for the next year was how can I help them do a better job. There is a phenomena that exists that is well documented of luck with Special Forces soldiers, whether they're SEALs, SAS, Commandos, Green Beret, doesn't matter, Delta. They get shot through the webbing of their clothing, but it doesn't hit their body. They drove over an IED, it doesn't go off. They literally, stories of guys landing in combat, fighting for 6 hours, getting back on the helo, and then they start bleeding. It's so common. So they asked, is this a trainable dynamic? How can we get this across 800 guys who go up for selection? How can we have more luck with these guys? And it was very obvious to me how that takes place. And it's a trainable dynamic. And so that's what I became known for, was the luck bubble. And how you can take someone and you you don't have to solve their problems. You just get them to come from a higher vibration. And for these guys, it was get the job done. 1, look after your mates and have a good time. There's no room for emotion in combat. You can feel what you feel, but don't react to it. And that was where the luck bubble was born. So I then left the military, started coaching football teams, and then, long story short, I ended up on my back with an injury for a couple of months, and intuition said, you now need to travel, and you need to document rituals around the world. I'm like, well, I spent a lot of money here getting better with this injury and this surgery. And intuition said, just wait. Tomorrow you'll have someone will want some information on something, you to read into it, use your intuition, and you should act on that. And a guy called me who was a lawyer and said, we've got this company we'd like to work with. What do you get? I just went, wow, these guys are going to blow up. So intuition said, we'll buy some shares. So I bought some shares at 22 cents. And then within a month, they were $3.90. So I took the money that I made from that and I traveled the world and documented extreme rituals and practices from around the world, magic rituals. I took quantum physicists and doctors with me. And then a producer from here in LA heard about what I was doing, and they brought me to the US, turned my life into a TV series. It was called Mankind's Guinea Pig, me being the guinea pig for mankind. And unfortunately, that didn't work out. It was just energetically, it wasn't. They wanted to dramatize it and do other things, and so I backed out of that deal completely. And then a company asked if I could create luck for them. I said, well, I guess so. So I stepped in and created a massive amount of luck for them. They raised millions of dollars and took their technology to the world. Then another company heard what I was doing, and I did the same thing for them. Created incredible luck, pivoted their technology, raised millions. It's gone nuts. And then a third company, the company I'm currently working with, a biotech firm, who had some fantastic, groundbreaking science, but just it wasn't falling into place for them. So I didn't want to be the healer. I didn't want to be this corporate shaman, for want of a better term. But intuition just said, shut up and do what you're told. And it was to come and join these guys for a month. And 2 days into this, I realized it was a 3-month thing. First month, stop the rot. Second month, build momentum. Third month, luck would happen. And just before Christmas, 10 weeks into things, that's exactly what happened. So they brought me back here for the year. And now the technology and entertainment firms of the world are coming knocking to ask me how I can create luck for them. Very long answer to your very short question.
No, we needed that background.
Yeah.
So you create the luck bubble for soldiers, and you create the luck bubble for athletes. It seems like those are kind of similar, you know? Like,
very much so. The exact same thing.
And so is the same process what you use for corporate work?
Corporate work's a little bit different with an entity, but it's essentially the same thing. The basic premise is there's an ether that exists through which all things are created. And
God, essentially?
For whatever you want to call it. You know, the only reason we believe what we believe is by virtue of where and when we grew up. If you and I grew up in 7th century Norway, we would believe in the Norse gods without a doubt. If we grew up in Afghanistan up to 50 years ago, we would be Muslim without a doubt. So I believe it's one and all. It's just the language you would like to use to describe it.
Well, there are a lot of different beliefs here in America, and I'm sure that's probably hard to kind of find that common ground because, you know, Afghanistan, everybody's a Muslim, but here it seems like everyone's got their own shit. If you ask people what God is or what that ether is, you might get 50 different answers from 50 people. Does that present a problem for your work here?
No, not at all, because it transcends that. It transcends what you believe. It's just the truth of what it is.
Right.
Simple as that. Does it work for you or not? You can have all the theories you want about something, but how's that working out for you? Do no harm to anyone else. Simple. Go and create what you love. We're not just here to be, we're here to create. One in, all in. If you have a problem with someone, it's actually your problem. It's your stuff.
Right.
It's not them.
As far as the problem that these corporations are having, probably lots of corporations are having them. Before you talk about how you change their luck, what are some of the problems that they're having? I mean, what's causing the wires to cross?
Yeah, sure. Well, the first thing is that I get through to them is that there's no problems to solve. If you focus on the problem, it just creates more of the problem. There's no problems to solve. There's just what you would love to create. Simple as that. So my job is to get them off their problems. Sure, naming their problem, naming what's going on for them is very easy for me to do because I can read, but then it's taking them to that higher vibration, that joy, that galvanization. When I work with teams, it's getting them to come from connection. I can spend 2 hours training with any football club in the world. At the end of it, you got the largest, toughest bastards you got there are in tears because they're realizing that it's all about connection. They're just there for one and all. We lucky few, we band of brothers, what we wouldn't give for this day 20 years from now. So why is it that you're stuck in your head? You know, special forces, when they're rolling through a house, they're shoulder to shoulder. The worst thing that can happen is your mate gets hit. Look after your mates, have a good time, get the job done. Unfortunately, most athletes are too stuck in their head and their narcissism to realize that what they actually really want is to connect, and that's available to them right then and there. There's no problems to solve here. Don't need to solve your shit, your addiction, or whatever it is. I just need to get you to reconnect with your joy, with your love, with your brothers. And together, I can create dynasties within football. I shouldn't say that. This methodology creates dynasties within football teams because they transcend it, sets a river of energy that everything else comes into. And the cancers get cut out. They just get ejected out of it, no matter how talented they are.
Right. And in professional sports these days, I know when we played in the NFL, it was about, you know, it was a business. That's what they told us everywhere. I watched my teammates get shuffled from team to team, get cut on no notice at all. And so you start to realize that this team concept, what you're describing, which is completely integral to winning on the field, but is lost on the management, oftentimes the people who are controlling your fate. And so for players, they start to think, well, I got to look out for me. If I don't look out for me, I'm going to get trampled. And I think the corporate sports makes it probably really hard to do what you're doing, but absolutely needed. What do you think?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you brought up a really interesting point in corporate sports where as an individual it becomes a game of survival. You know, it becomes a game of what do I need to do just to stay on this team, just to continue earning a paycheck, just to make sure that I'm on the field. And you lose that sense of what got you there, that connection, that love for the game, you know, the thing that you felt in high school, you know, that I felt in high school, that, you know, that brotherhood, that bond, that sense of belonging in a tribe, that really gets, you know, you get cut off from that as you move up the ranks and the money becomes bigger and the show becomes bigger. I think that you clicked right into something that I definitely experience as being true, which makes, you know, the work that Kirk does crucial at that level, you know, for guys to be brought back down to that essence of why they're there, which is, you know, we love this game. I love my brothers. It's about this connection that we have together on the field and going out and doing battle together. And, you know, I think that's a key part of why we love sports. Go back a little bit, Kirk, with what were some of so how did you create this luck bubble with, you know, soldiers and athletes? Like, what were some of the mechanics of it that you put into place?
Yeah, well, I'll come to that, but I just want to make a point about what you're saying, Nate, about the corporate structure. And I will not work with a corporation unless I'm working with their CEO one-on-one. The person who can hire, fire, and get it done that everyone answers to. Because if it doesn't change at the top, I agree with you. Yeah. It can't possibly permeate down. It has to be with that top of the tree that I'm working with, as well as the players, for instance, to set the river. Because you've got the corporate guys are coming from a problem to solve here every day. They've got a problem to solve. We got to win. We got to win. Instead of coming from that high vibration, which a byproduct of that is winning.
Right.
Because they're focused on the problem. I got to keep my job here. We need to win. If you're focused, you think you're going to lose your job, no matter what you do, I guarantee you're going to lose your job.
Right.
No matter how much you win. If you're freaking out about getting injured, I guarantee you're going to get injured. The basic premise is whatever has the power in your subconscious is created, without a doubt. And how it's created is by the virtue of you reacting to a thought and emotion that you have. I'm freaking out about getting cut. I need to train harder. So you start training harder, but because the structure is you think you're going to get cut, you're going to get cut. I guarantee you'll get injury from overtraining. Something will happen. You go about creating that very thing you're trying to get away from.
That's the entire dynamic in NFL. I mean, every guy is doing that. Overtraining, overworking his body, paranoid about being cut. The average career is only 3.5 years long. the turnover is amazing. The guys who come in
Yeah.
constantly. There are guys at home waiting by the phone for that guy to get hurt and me to, jump on a flight and be there the next day. And so that thing you're talking about, that subconscious fear of injury and being cut is constant. And
Absolutely. I heard this thing the other day that whatever you put into darkness compels you towards it.
Absolutely.
Brings
What you
you-
resist persists.
Exactly.
It actually
There
has a
you go.
psychological term. It's called abdification. Abdification is the avoidance of an emotion, which is guaranteed to propagate said emotion. It's quite simple. Don't think, just feel. Feel what's coming up for you. Let it pass. You don't have to react to it. You can have the emotion as intense as it is. But why do we resist it so much? Go there. The pain is not nearly as bad as what we assume the pain's going to be.
Right.
Be with that. Let it pass through you energetically. And then make a choice from your joy, not from getting away from the pain, because it's only going to create more pain. And for you Americans, that's pain. Sorry, as opposed to pain.
yeah,
Pain.
we got some smart listeners out there, man. They know what's up.
Yeah.
So how much do our obsessions with cell phone technology take us away from those moments that you're talking about where we have to feel what's happening in us? That moment of like, oh, I'm just kind of sad. I think I'll pull out my phone and look through nonsense, How much of an obstacle is that for you to communicate with people, to try to get them to ditch these technological crutches that they use to get through their days?
Yeah, it's tension breaking. It doesn't matter. It's an addiction. It's what addiction is. It's getting away from what you don't like feeling. That's what addiction is. You break the tension. But here's the thing. Tension is inherent in any creation. Otherwise, you're not creating it. You have a current reality and you have a vision. That's a tension. If you break that tension, you're not going to end up at your vision. Just be with the pain. Look, pain, as my mentor used to say, pain is inherent. Suffering, well, that's optional. It's up to you. People just don't realize what the habitual addiction is to get away from. And cell phones are just an obvious one that people just go to it all the time. Stand in a bar, I'm the only person here. Instead of standing in your power, having a drink, enjoying yourself or whatever, what do? You go to your phone to make it look as if you're not alone.
Right.
Right.
Every idle moment, not just at the
Absolutely.
bar, in an elevator, at the fucking urinal.
Sure.
I mean, how many times
Yeah.
do a line of dudes pissing and everyone's got their phone out? That's
Or
what-
in the gym.
in the gym.
Love it at the gym when I'm like in the middle of a superset, just crushing it. And I'm across the gym hitting one exercise, walking back to my other machine, and there's some little dude on there on his phone just sitting at the machine.
Or
I'm like,
talking.
dude, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
We're here to work. And I think that, technology, as great as it can be for connecting us and exposing us to limitless amounts of information, I think it's created such a massive distraction for people that there's a huge percentage of this population of the world that's totally distracted, has no sense of who they are, is very disconnected, and it just goes to further the point.
I agree with you. And just a simple act for people is to just compartmentalize the hours that you have your phone. Don't pick up, don't even turn it on in the morning until you get in the car to go to work to make some calls.
Right.
Don't turn it off when you're home. Richard Branson, I hear, only engages with electronics up until noon. And he turns it off.
It's a great
and no
one.
one can contact him for that unless they're in the flesh.
Right.
He says, it works for me. You've got to step up. You've got to make these parameters for yourself. How much do you love yourself or not to do something that's going to change your life, little by little steps like this.
I see it affecting youth sports too, because these kids, and school, of course, their attention is fractured at school, but the connectedness that's important, looking at people in the eye, feeling that camaraderie, feeling the energy. There's instances, of course, in sports when I'm standing looking this way, but I know exactly what's happening behind me. I can feel it, I'm sure that's part of that being lost in the moment, that essence that we all have of feeling things around us. But I feel like that is lost when you're so used to this, at school. That these sports teams don't feel as connected. I don't know. Maybe I'm just
deadens the senses.
Yeah.
I tried to look for the grayscale thing. I want to do
grayscale.
grayscale on my phone.
Yeah.
Because I've been turning it on airplane, throughout the day I'll turn on airplane, or definitely at night before bed I put it on airplane mode.
What's grayscale?
Grayscale is a color coding thing that you can do on your phone that makes it not as enticing to look at.
No
because,
blue light.
Really?
So you eliminate the
because
blue light.
essentially part of the reason why we're so drawn to it is we open it up, we look at our apps, and they're so colorful and exciting, we're just pressing on them, right? Have you had that experience where you have something to look at your phone for, you pull it out, open it, and then you just look at a bunch of other shit, and you close it, and you're like, why was I looking at it?
Yeah.
Well, because it was so attractive. So essentially, there's so it's all gray. I'll send you the directions on how to do that, and maybe we'll provide it for our listeners at home.
Ow!
So they can see this shit. But it's actually done a lot for me. I don't look at it as much anymore. I don't sit there staring at it.
Well, there's all these invisible, frequencies, EMF happening. There's all kinds of the Wi-Fi vibrations affect us on a cellular level that we can't even, we don't even have the understanding or awareness to deal with that, to bear that.
No, we don't know. The science has not caught up to what our technologies are doing to us.
And they have not surpassed the advertising agencies who have convinced you that you should be using this product as well.
You need it.
Because that's a whole nother level of
the advertising is just evil in this country. I mean, it's not evil.
Maybe
evil. I think people's intentions are good. They want to make money for their businesses, and they find the right ways to do that. But there's nothing that these people won't do to get you to buy their product.
Yeah.
Like you watch commercials. I don't know if you guys watch the Super Bowl commercials. Very sentimental, always pulling at the heartstrings, showing you a story of people who've died, kids who are dying of cancer, all this shit. And then it's like, hey, drink Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
At the end of it.
Yeah, that drinking a bunch of sugar, that's the way to feeling good.
The irony is not lost on me that everyone's communicating and no one is connecting. And these ads, the advertisers have worked out that that's what people want. So they're literally doing the same thing to entice you into feeling.
Right.
Which is the very thing that's getting you away from feeling, is being engaged with the advertising.
Right.
Self-perpetuating.
They show you this little story, this little 30-second tear-jerker story, and at the very end of it, they stamp their brand on it.
Boom.
And then, boom, that's branded on your cerebellum.
You go,
right?
I lust for that because I'm on my phone all day. Well, the fact is, put your phone down, get someone you love, stand there, look them in the eyes, give them a hug.
Right.
Shut the fuck up for a period of time. Just be with that person, and you will get that same endorphin kick at a much greater level than being manipulated by the advertising agencies. Right. How many people do that?
Yeah.
It's an amazing thing.
It seems that people are becoming very uncomfortable in the most basic interactions with people because of their dependence on, technology. When it does come to that face-to-face thing, people are avoiding it at all costs, like we were talking about. You have a transaction at a store and people just can't wait to get out of there.
Yeah.
You can order food with the push of a button. You can order transportation at the push of a button. You can buy a car at the push of a button. I don't know. Maybe I'm just sounding like a guy who's, lamenting the advancements in technology, but I feel like
I think we're at this place where we've had the technology, we've had cell phones and computers and the access for so long that it's really disrupted our way of being to a point where now we have to really evaluate how do we use this in a responsible way that doesn't fuck up the rest of our lives, essentially, that doesn't disconnect us from the rest of the world. And I think that's what this time is really about.
And that's why the work you're doing is probably so much more compelling, and you're feeling pulled to it maybe more because people need it.
Yeah, well, that's just the thing I was saying to Airby. I spent 15 years running away from this. I didn't want to be a healer, and then there came a period of time where I just had to shut the fuck up and do what I'm told, and things are evolving in a way that I never could possibly have imagined. And that's the way it shows itself. You take the one step, and then from that one step, so much more is created. It reminds me of the story of I had a client years ago who was probably my biggest client at the time, and he had an agency that was doing well, and he said, okay, smartass, you can tell people's true nature and purpose. What's my purpose? And I sat with it and tuned in, and I just went, it comes to you in symbols, and I'm sitting there, I can't tell him that, but I can't not say it, otherwise I'll get a dirty big bitch slap somehow energetically. So I said, mate, you want to be a clown? He said, really? And he sat back and folded his arms and going, oh, shit, but I've opened that can of worms now. So I didn't stop talking for 20 minutes. That's the way it works. They just go blah, 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 clown, 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 kids clown, red nose, big shoes. That's the only thing you've ever wanted to do, yada, yada, yada. He said, really? I said, yeah, that's what I get. So anyway, I'll let myself out, expecting that he was never going to call me ever again. And he looks me in the eye and says, I've always wanted to be a clown. And I've never told anybody. I'd never admit to it. I admitted it to my mother, and she said that's not a good idea. And when I was very young, I never told anybody. He's like, so what do I do? I said, well, okay, what's the bridge? The bridge is...
Buy a red nose.
Go exactly that. Go and do a clown course. He said, but the business, 25 million a year, I can't just step away from this. I said, mate, that's the only thing I get. Next day he calls me, what else do you get? I said, nothing. I don't get anything else. I only get one step at a time. You only take that one step and it opens up other things. The truth is only valid in the moment that you ask it. Because you realize the truth, the very next moment, it may not be true anymore. That's the way it works. For a week, he called me every day. I said, well, you can't call me anymore until you take the step. He takes a step the next day, calls me and says, I took the step. What do you get? I went, there's someone that you know, a friend of the family, and they can run the business for you really well. They're in between positions. He went, I know exactly who you're talking about. Engaged them, went and did the course. A week later, he calls me in tears in the cab, coming back from the course. It was the best thing I ever did. It was fantastic. It was just great. I just was alive. But here's the kicker. The guy I brought in a client worth $25 million. He doubled the revenue of the company by not being there, by following his purpose. Your purpose is your paycheck. And then he left the business and started traveling the world doing a clown course for kids in underprivileged countries. And he met a woman who was doing art for underprivileged kids, and they fell in love and are happily married and travel the world doing that, making more money than sin, living their purpose.
Right.
So
Amazing.
the point comes back to you only see one step at a time. You have the courage to take that, then there's more available to you.
Right. So the process by which you're able to determine this from that client specifically, are you simply just kind of walking in and sitting in front of him at his desk and telling him what you read? Or is there a ritualistic process for you understanding these things about people? Are there any sacraments involved in what you do?
Yeah, sacrificing several virgins must take place. No, not at all. In fact,
no sacraments like ayahuasca, music, drums. Think typical shamanic sacraments that are used, in vision quests and stuff like that.
No. The simple answer is absolutely not. When people want to work with me, I promise to spend 10 minutes with them, and I just ask to serve the highest good, just like I did before we came on air here. I choose to serve the highest good, and I ask for some guidance with that, and I simply read them. And I name whether or not, A, it serves the highest good to work with them, and B, if so, how that looks. And then I give them insight into themselves that makes them go, holy shit, how could you possibly know that about me? How could you know? It's not psychic. Psychic is projectionary. Intuition is what's obvious about the person. You read them, you go, well, this is obviously what you do. This is what your stuff is consistently in your life. And I can see that this, and this happens in this pattern every single time when you go after something that you love. And people go, holy shit. But I will not, at that point in time, work with them any further if it does not serve the highest good. And I've got to be honest.
How do you define the highest good?
The highest good, I get insight into whether or not it serves right now to work with this person. And people have a real problem with it when I say, I'm sorry, I get insight, but it doesn't serve the highest good right now. There may come a time, and it will come to me, and it will come to you, and you will contact me again, but it's not right now, which in this town, now they get more and more celebrity clients and powerful clients. They don't take that too well when they're used to getting what they want. When you say, I'm sorry, it doesn't serve the highest good. But it doesn't, and I have to go with that. No matter how enamoring it is or how powerful they are or how much I'd like to work with them, I've just got to do what I'm told, and that serves the highest good. I can't explain how it works. It just works.
And have you always had these intuitions since you were a child?
When I was a kid, I used to see stuff in people I thought everybody else saw. But then when I studied with the master, I realized we actually all have it to a certain degree. We all have this ability.
What were you seeing? Sorry to interrupt.
I just knew why people did stuff. I just knew that they had cancer of the esophagus because they wouldn't speak their mind. And no matter how many times they cut out the cancer would always come back because they had this thing about speaking up. The basic premise is that we form stuff as a child. Something happens, an event at a very young age. We go, oh, that's the way it is. That's the way I am in the world. And we become dedicated to proving that that's the way we are in the world. So much so that we would rather be right about it than happy. I'd be right that I can't get any respect. Well, you know what? If you've got a lot of disrespect going on in your life, that's because you don't respect yourself. Because you're trying to get away. You're like, I don't get respect, so I'm going to do something to get respect, which goes around proving the very thing you're trying to get away from, that false vision, if you will. So I saw that, but in working with people more and more, everyone has that skill to a level. They just need to be trained on the difference between what is imagined and what is real, what is their stuff and what's obvious about the other person.
And so you had these feelings, you had these intuitions about people, and when you studied with certain teachers or healers, that's what kind of brought it out of you?
Very much so.
Can you talk a little bit about those people you studied with, and if you're at liberty to do that?
Yeah, sure. One of my main mentor as an intuit was William Whitecloud, who wrote a book called The Magician's Way, which I recommend to people. I've studied with other intuitive masters, but he is by far, regardless of any other stuff, is by far the best intuitive teacher that I've ever met. It's a powerful moment when you're sitting with 3 other people who've never read someone before in their life, and you go, okay, start talking for 15 minutes and don't shut up. And those 3 people get exactly the same thing as you, and you're like, holy cow, I know stuff. Because here's the kicker. It's not just what's obvious, but it's your soul. I believe your imagination is your soul. And as you just let yourself talk and you don't get interrupted and you just go, well, what's obvious? You go, blah, 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 blah. It's spot on to the person. How could you possibly know that? You never discount what you get. Intuition is what you get directly before your rational mind goes, nah, that can't be right, or I can't do that. It's directly before. So William definitely, a lot of the shamans that I saw around the world when I was doing the TV show, they have the same sort of, they have different rituals to get there, but it's essentially the same stuff. You know, the best shamans I know, the most powerful ones, are the ones who are just people. There's that saying, you know, a man looks at a mountain, sees a mountain. The wise man, though, looks at a mountain, sees so much more. But the wisest of men, he knows it's just a fucking mountain. So the wisest shamans I know, and they're not all one with the world and at peace with everything. For the most part, that's bullshit. I run from those guys. It's the ones who are super real. I'll tell you the story of a very famous shaman who was in a big Hollywood film that a lot of people went and saw. And I was in Southeast Asia, and my girlfriend woke up and she had mastitis in the breasts, large lumps, a number of them. And she was freaking out. She said, I need to see a doctor. I said, well, we're in a place where I don't really trust that. Let's just tune in. I tuned in. I was like, wow, there's actually a strong healer here. And the healer was this woman from this film. And she said, you don't even know how to find her. I said, well, actually, I kind of think I do, but no address. And I just turned up near this place, this reference point. And I stood around, looked around, and there's people carving and people beating sheet metal. And then there's this person screaming on this phone to the gas company in a native language. And I looked up and went, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's her. And she looked at me and looked at my girlfriend and fingered for us to come towards her. So literally, like, put the phone down, held it on her chest and went, come. So we came over into this garage, and she's still arguing with the gas company. Hey, arguing. She takes out a dagger. Gets my girlfriend to lie down on the table. This dagger is a blunt dagger, and starts digging this blunt dagger into the lumps on the breasts of my girlfriend. I'm laughing at this stage. My girlfriend's in pain. She's like, what?
She's still on the phone with the gas?
Still on the phone to the gas company, screaming at them while she's working. And then she looks up at me and goes, puts the phone in and says, Lila, take your clothes off. I'm like, huh? And she signaled to her assistants, and assistants came over and they took my clothes off, and I'm standing there. I'm butt naked. My girlfriend's on the table with a blunt dagger getting jabbed in, and this woman is still screaming down the gas phone company line. And I'm laughing my ass off, and her assistants are scrubbing me with this vine, and it's scratchy as all hell, but they're scrubbing me, scraping the crap out of me. And after an hour and a half, she's like, okay, done. She's still on the phone to the gas company. Gets us in, we pay her, and I said, do we come back? And she said, no. She just says, you love her, as in like indicating that I needed to
fornicate.
I needed to be intimate, but specifically in a way, and that's what the herbs were for. So what was interesting was that for the next 3 days, thanks to the herbs, I don't know how it happens, how it works, but I was so hard, a cat couldn't scratch it. And it was on for the next 2 days, and literally, there's a saying within Tantra, to make love to her, to fuck her open to God. Excuse the French, but that's a saying, to take that, the masculine, the sword of light, and then that's our role, is to open the woman up to her to receive, but have that connection with the energy. Within 2 days, her lumps all went away.
Wow.
I can't explain how it happens, but my point was that I could tell you several stories about the shamans who are the most real are the ones that still have their own stuff. They know it's just a mountain. They're not tied up into the identity of being, of soul, of connection. There's no connection. There's no. They're not acting. They're not identifying with it. They just are. They get a tool and it comes through them. Again, long answer to your short question.
I mean, that's why we're here.
Yeah,
Hear those stories.
Love that.
When you say shaman, what do you mean? Because there's, like we were talking about before, that word gets thrown around a lot. Some people don't like it. Some people it's a dirty word or a scary word.
I think a lot of people in this day and age especially think it has to do with, going and doing an ayahuasca journey or stepping into the psychedelics or whatever that might be, going down to the Amazon.
What originated in Siberia, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes, very good. I think the literal translation of the term is keeper of knowledge, or knowledge keeper, or something along those lines, but that was the origins of it. And it's a term that's bandied about a bit, but it's in every culture. It's just another word. It's the witch doctor, it's the medicine man or woman, it's the wizard, the magician. It's the same thing. But my experiences with the shaman is that any process you do, it takes the wise man. This town shoots me to tears. I know people have done ayahuasca 30, 40 times without the shaman. They can't find their fucking keys.
Yeah, no.
It's a waste of time.
There's a whole scene of people doing ayahuasca in this town at people's like Beverly Hills bungalows and thinking it's going to solve all their problems.
You need the wise man to lead you to it. You need the information the wise man has. There's 3 phases to the trip that you go on. You need that entity there that's outside of you that has the wisdom to guide you. Otherwise, you're just breaking the tension of your life. You're just taking the drug to get out. You're not hearing the message. You're not seeing your darkness. People come out of the trip like, it was so wonderful. Like, well, you didn't have the money's worth. The person who dies.
Right. The ego death.
Literally, the egoic death where you think you die. Like, I've done more rituals than just about anybody else on the planet of different cultures. And I've died a few times where I've stopped breathing and they thought I needed medical attention. The shaman's like, nope. It's exactly where it needs to be. And then kick back in again. Like flatline type of shit. Don't tell my mom. She wasn't happy.
What were some of those rituals? Can you talk about some of them?
Yeah, sure.
Maybe one in particular?
Okay, well, let's go to the one that originally the first episode of the show, which was around ecstatic shaking. There's a master. Ecstatic shaking is in 20-odd cultures around the world where you shake your body until such times the shaking overtakes you energetically. And a lot of cultures have their own rituals and practices around it, their own belief systems about being entities in and out of you, etc. But when I first went there, I just went there to play. And that shaman was literally one of those playful people. He's like, just be happy. Like, yeah, but what about this pain? Just happy. But shut up, happy. Just laughing, just keep laughing, just keep shaking and it'll come. And on the 3rd day, he walked up to me and said through his translator, your liver is very dirty. I said, no shit, you should see what I do to the poor bastard. And he said, huh? And the translator went, oh, no, don't worry about it. And he pointed at my liver and asked me to touch his hands. I touched his hand and a bolt of lightning came out of his hands and hit me in the guts. And I started shaking uncontrollably. You shake 2 hours at a time, 3 times a day. In the first 3 days, it's a chore physically. Like no shaking was coming through me. I was working hard and it's painful. But then I started shaking uncontrollably. I shook for 48 hours, could not stop shaking, couldn't sleep, and just sweat pouring out of me. I lost 6 kilos, so 14 pound in that 48-hour period. And I went to another place with it, and it was painful. So then I got an understanding, whoa, there's something else going on here that I know not about. So I went to his home to spend time with him in the ashram, and I died a death there. On the videotape, you see about a 5 out of 10 of how much I lost my shit. And I died. And it was like, I've had some bad pain. Like cordite in the eye, that was pretty painful. Yeah.
What is cordite?
Cordite is the residue from gunpowder.
Oh, okay.
What happened was I went forward in a live fire exercise and a stick popped up as I was crawling and gouged out the cornea up into my eyelid, and it left the cordite in there, and what it did was like an acid, it just ate away my cornea because I didn't want to get cut, you know.
Yeah.
Whether or not I see that as, I had a great amount of shame from being cut because at to start with, I just wanted to see if I can make it. Everyone wants to know if they've got it in them to be an NFL footballer, a pro athlete, or a special forces soldier. Can I be the best of the best? And that's what I was interested in. But then somewhere along the line, I became enamored with the job. I wanted to go and serve. But you got to make that decision early before you go, because you can't decide to kill or not kill when you're on task. You decide to go or not go, because if someone's got a 12-year-old kid's got an AK pointed at my mate, I'm going to have to do the job. So I now review it as not failing at selection by getting injured, more of a case of, I think, greater powers were at work to stop me from having to make those decisions.
Absolutely. Psychedelics. What are your view on psychedelics?
Can be a wonderful tool. The doorways of perception. Wonderful tool. But again, it takes the shaman. It takes guidance. It's not just do it and break the tension of your life. It's do it with a purpose. Do it with intention. What serves the highest good? I choose to serve the highest good today. I choose to gain insight that gives me insight into my stuff, my darkness, my pain. Go there. Start with that. Once you got that, then you can maybe move on to, there's something I'd love to create. What's the best way to go about that? Gain insight outside of your preconceived idea. Tap into something greater than yourself. Like I said, there's an ether. Anyone who thinks there's not an ether that exists through which things are created, sorry, just naive and ignorant. Science is only just now catching up to what the shamans have known for want of a better term, thousands and thousands of years.
Right.
I was reading a book, I don't know if you've heard of it, you've read it, The Cosmic Serpent.
Yeah.
And it's about indigenous people who had this kind of micro cellular knowledge of plants through doing ayahuasca, and these American botanists went down there and tried to figure out how they knew this stuff, and they said, well, the plants told us. The plants tell us all this stuff. And they said, what do you mean? We're scientists. You've not seen this under a microscope,
right.
And yet you're doing these ceremonies and you're recreating it with drawings, double helixes and stuff like that. How
Going
do you know?
out into the jungle and just picking plants and saying, this cures a snake bite. This is the vine that we mix to create ayahuasca, all that stuff.
And I was doing a little research for this, and I was looking online, and Socrates had a quote in 368 BC about how, sometimes we sit there and let the trees and the stones talk to us, as long as they're not lying to us. So there are a lot of different psychedelics that exist, and I'm sure a lot of them are used in different shamanic rituals. For guys like us, me and Eben, who went through this really gnarly experience playing professional football and are now trying to transition out of it and help our buddies, athletes like us, are there any psychedelics that you would say are better than others or more appropriate for what we're going through? Do we even need that to kind of shed the stuff that we're dealing with?
Good question.
Yeah.
And something that's very, very simple to answer, and that is find the wise man. Ask for the wise man. Ask for help. I see professional athletes the same as professional soldiers, which is your identity is tied up in what you did. And when you leave the game and you leave the battlefield, you don't know who you are without the adulation, without what you did, without turning up and being part of the team. Then who am I? So you break that tension by turning to drugs, alcohol, whatever your addiction is, not being happy, depression. I mean, it's such a cliche that the guy who was a superstar is now a sack of shit and really struggling and depressed. Oh, poor baby. He made $100 million and poor baby's a little depressed. But the fact is, it is real. It is absolutely real for that individual because he doesn't know himself. As all the shamans would say to me, all the rituals, all the practices, mate, Kirk, doesn't matter. It just comes back to self-love. Know your stuff. Know your greatness. Then come back to knowing God, whatever that is for you. It's very simple. Don't think, just feel, love thyself. It all comes back to self-love. It comes back to knowing yourself, knowing what you're addicted to. And for athletes, it's very simple. Find a wise man. Give me a call. I'll know you in 10 minutes on what it's about for you. And then if it's appropriate to continue to work together. Before you go and do the psychedelics, before you gain that insight. Because if you just can do the psychedelic, again, it's just a departure. It's just breaking the tension, something to get excited about. and that doesn't have weight after a period of time. Use it to know yourself. Use it to unlock why you do what you do, what you're habitually addicted to proving about yourself. I'm not enough. I don't have the capacity. For whatever reason that is, get that knowledge, and that comes from the wise man. Then it's a chance to evolve more, take it to a whole nother level by going to the psychedelics, because it'll take you even deeper still. But again, that's just name it and it shall retreat into the shadows. You know, when they're talking the Bible, they're not talking about, I don't believe they're talking about the devil. I believe they're talking about your stuff. You know, it's in every great text, the New Testament, Old Testament, the Quran, the Kabbalah, the I Ching, the Kahuna work, meaning of life. They can't agree, none of them agree with what happens after this life, not one of them. But they all agree what this life is about. They have the same sentence or inference to it. Meaning of this life? Know thyself. That is the key for an athlete. That is the key for someone who's had their identity wrapped up in what they did. Come to know yourself. Come to know your darkness. Come to know your greatness. Come to know God. And love yourself. It's pretty simple. Nothing to solve here. No problems to solve here. Just get back to joy. Jung said it best, the father of psychology, before he died. I paraphrase, but he said something like, the best you can hope for is you think about something you love more often than you think about the thing that's messing you up. It's pretty simple. Why do we make it so hard?
Well, and especially in this day and age, going back to what we were talking about, social media, phones, constant, you know, something to constantly look at and access. How do people get back to that? Get back to their essence? How do people find that again on their own? You know, for people listening to this who, you know, maybe they're, you know, is it as simple as sitting in meditation followed by, you know, a moment of self-love and then asking the question, you know, God, the universe, powers that be, please bring to me the wise man to give me guidance?
Jeez, you're on my job, mate. You know.
I'm just
nailed it.
Thanks, man.
Meditation is by far, in a way, every culture had it. Prayer, in its essence, is meditation. It's just a chance to be, just to empty yourself of what you're feeling. Don't think, just feel and be with what comes up for you without having to react to it. Then it takes the power out of it. Then whilst you're in that powerful place of neutrality, have a chance to love yourself.
How do you do that when you have so many things to accomplish, such as writing emails, filling out insurance forms, tax forms, having business conversations with people, going to the DMV, sitting in traffic, doing all these formality, form-filling things that kind of take you away from that self-love and that meditative state of oneness with yourself? How do you separate the two, or how do you figure that out amongst all these red tape?
The red tape of life. See, that's construct in itself. It's an assumption. Because what happens is when you start meditating, shit just tends to work out more and more for you. You end up with more time. Taking an hour out a day, or even just 30 minutes a day to meditate, will give you, eventually after a period of time, hours in a day. So it's just a choice. How much do you love yourself to actually say, no, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to get up. You know, Jocko Willnick's whole thing about getting up at 4:30 in the morning. Have your own time. Take a few. How much? So you're tired. So what? Get up. Meditate. Give it. I guarantee if you can do Oprah's challenge, 21 days of meditation. That's why she and Deepak were doing it. 21 days, you are not the same person that started that. You may not see the differences, but the stuff that used to worry you doesn't worry you as much anymore. And you get more and more time. If you don't think you got the time in the day, or you do think you got the time in the day, you are right.
Right.
I'm
going to give you a little example of my own life. Like I'm a writer, and so I'm always trying to find that meditative state that I can write in. And it's difficult to get that because of all the things I was describing about the modern world. But when I do find that flow, when I'm lost in real writing, which, you know, is something you have to do every day to kind of keep it rolling. And when I get that thing rolling, I inevitably stop looking at the things that you need to do as an adult in America to not be thrown in jail, like paying bills, things like that. Like I got my mail just stacked up there. I don't even open it when I'm in this state of creating. And I'm trying to find a way to balance the two, because you got to open those bills, and you got to pay them, and you got to do those things to keep the ball rolling and keep the lights on. But at the same time, it takes me away from this creation. And is there any advice you'd give on how to balance the creative with kind of the clerical?
Compartmentalize. Special Forces soldiers, they have that ability. They have less PTSD per capita in SF than they do in the regular military, because they have that ability to compartmentalize what they do. Take the opportunity to get yourself up to speed with your writing, and that's your writing time. Get it done. It's the discipline. But then you have your clerical time. There's working in the business, just the writing, and there's working on the business, which is the business of writing. But then you got the clerical stuff as well. The compartmentalization of that. But if you don't believe you got the time, I guarantee you're not going to have the time. You got to make a stand for this, because your subconscious is going, that's right, we haven't got the time. I haven't got the time, so I'll do this. Oh, that's right, because you haven't got the time. As opposed to, I got the time. Okay, from that space, what would I love to do? I need to write. I need to have this period of time, then I'll take care of that. It's your subconscious at play, proving that you haven't got the time. I'm always late. Oh, that's right, because we're always late.
Right.
It's self-propagating. So
I don't really feel that I don't have time. The time is not the thing. To me, it's going down in the place that you need to be in to create the good stuff.
Gotcha.
It's basically the stuff we're talking about right now. And going down there and what that does to me in my personal life when I do that. And then, trying to stay down there as long as I can to create as much as I can, but then you got to come up for air, and you got to come out and go out in the world, and you got to go to the grocery store, and you got to feed yourself. You got to have, all that. I don't feel crunched for time. I just, it's a constant struggle, I think, with artists trying to balance the two in a world that is asking you to sell your art as well. Mm-hmm. And so I'm thinking of ways to make money on my writing, and I'm thinking of, that's not the best way to write. You don't want to write for money, or else you're going to write shitty. But
look, this town, I'm all over this like a fat kid on a Twinkie, because I see it all the time in this town. And that is that there's your art and there's your commerce. And there's only a period of time that you can earn that your art can become your commerce. If you do it before that, you will just bastardize both. Mm-hmm. You will not have commerce, and your art will be shit. It's quite simple. In the Han Dynasty, which spanned, I think it was 100 BC to 200 AD, they took the brightest minds and they worked for the emperor, and their concept was to understand how the universe works. Yin and yang, acupuncture, meridians, that was all defined during this period. And they had something that if you didn't have a job, if you didn't have commerce, you weren't to go out and get a job, you were to go out and get an art. 10 steps to your art. Because what would happen is when your art was singing along, your commerce would come along for the ride. It's like I said before, your purpose is your paycheck. It's the clown who went and be a clown, and he ends up making more money because he's on purpose with his art. Same in this town. Too many people are relying on being a performer or a writer or whatever, and they need that cash coming in from that. That bastardizes their art. It influences their art. They need to have their art for joy's sake. If you are not doing what you do for the joy of doing it whilst you're doing it, I'll give you this much right now. Stop, have a think about what you love, and go and do that, and shit will work out. Stop it. Don't come here to be a star. Come here because you get a chance to learn and act and be in class and write and wrap yourself up in stories and other story writers for the joy of it. It's not your commerce. First, they would say there's 10 phases to your art.
So you're saying get an extra job to pay the bills, and then focus on your art with no pretenses for money?
Absolutely, 100%. Without, I'm not saying it's get another job necessarily. I'm saying focus on your art first. And those art has 10 steps. There's 10 steps they would decree as you have to make a choice. I choose to find an art. Secondly, I investigate different arts. Thirdly, I make a choice about which art it is that I wish to commit myself to. 4, you find a teacher. Then you study. Then you go to finding a master. And then you go to competing, whatever it is, whether it's you're raising the bar with what you're doing. You're getting out there on auditions. You're actually putting your work into competitions. You're putting it out there. And it's only at this time when you're competing that you can start to earn money from your art. What interestingly happens, if you're dedicated to those phases, though, with your art, commerce comes along for the ride. Then the next phase is you start to teach it yourself after competing. You can't do this in any other order. You can't start teaching until you've been at least competing at a high level with it. Then you become a master. And then the last step is you find a new art. And what would happen is you engaging with the art like that, your commerce would work itself out. This is what they decreed. Stop going after your commerce. Put that aside. Go after your art. Your commerce will come along for the ride. Your purpose is your paycheck.
I agree. And sports is very similar. Yeah. Because when we were kids, we're not thinking about money. We're not thinking about sports. Yeah. Sports as revenue generating. We're becoming as good as we can at that art. And it's not until we're young men that we end up getting paid for it after we've been doing it for, 10, 14?
At least 10 years.
15 years.
I think that's really interesting, with just the epidemic of depression and unhappiness that we have in the world with people working jobs that they're not connected to whatsoever. Mm-hmm. They have no joy in their work.
But that's okay as long as they have their art.
Sure, but I think a lot of people don't have
exactly
their art.
Right.
Yeah, they're spending their time that they could be doing that, watching TV or streaming shows or looking on their phones.
And then you got arseholes on the internet saying, just do what you love. Do what you love and it'll all work out. Do it. Make your passion your paycheck. And it's the exact opposite. Your passion is not your paycheck. Your art is what you do for the love of doing your art. Your commerce is separate.
So what happens if you keep them separate? And then your art gets so good that it makes you a lot of money. How do you keep that kind of innocent, joyful creation of the art instead of being now consumed by money? Because even if you're not thinking about, I gotta make money, if you're making $50 million a year now because of your art, how do you prevent that from infecting the way you create?
Again, that's trying to solve a problem instead of just creating what you love. You simply go along the 10 steps of creation, which is you're competing with it, you're making money out of it. Okay, so then you start teaching it. Then you start. Don't forget, at any time you can choose a new art. So if it's burnt out for you, and your commerce is sort of rolling along, and you don't want to teach it, you don't want to become a master of it, you don't want to take those extra steps, you simply choose a new art.
Right.
10 steps is the evolution of it all. But there's no problems to solve here. There's just what would I love to create? Because whenever you're coming from that reactionary stance, I got this and it's a problem, I've got to but if I leave that, then it's trying to solve a problem. So I guarantee you'll create the exact thing you're trying to get away from. That's the way it works.
Right.
Where attention goes, energy flows. That which you resist persists.
I'm going to use Eminem as an example here, the rapper. When he was young, starting his career off, he had no money. He was working, double jobs and all this crap. He was making no money from his rap music. And his first 3 albums are incredible. You can feel that kind of I don't give a fuck thing. I have nothing to lose. And it was amazing.
Energy.
Right. Yeah. And then he gets rich and he lives in a mansion and has no more interaction with the outside world because his money has insulated him. And so his sharp wit, his observational skills, that quick tongue, all those things that made him such a great artist as he was coming up kind of went away when he insulated himself and all of his money. And now the stuff he makes, I don't think is anywhere close to the stuff he used to make. And it's probably, in his mind, too late to pick up a new art. You're saying it's not too late. It's never too late to pick up a new art. And even though you might be well known for something and master something else, you can pick up something else and become just as good at it.
If the joy's gone out of it, for him, I don't know him, and I'm just making assumptions about him, but he shouldn't really care about what I think about his art.
He does, though. That's what's so crazy, because the music he makes now is like, what's everyone going to think of me? Are they going to think I'm as great as I think I was? And like all this shit. It's very self-conscious music he's making, and it makes me sad because I love his music so much, and what he did, for about 5-7 years was just transcendent.
Yeah, absolutely.
And now he's talking about what his legacy will be and what people will think of him, and do I really have it anymore? And that's what his songs are about.
Well, if he's still in the joy of creating, then he's in the pocket and he should absolutely stay there. But if he's not, then it's run its course. And if he doesn't wish to move on to teach it and become a master for others to learn, then he should move on to his next art. It only comes down to doing what brings you joy. That's your art, for the act of doing it, not for what it's going to give you, not for what the fans think. If he's lost that for himself, then absolutely. And he should give no mind to what his fans think of it at all. In fact, if that's the case, then that's the very thing that's messing him up. because he's out of joy with it. He's reactionary. He's trying to solve a problem here. I'm out of touch with the people. It's a problem to solve, as opposed to just creating from his gift. But if the joy's gone out of it, he needs to step away and create something else. And you can absolutely, at any age, step into a new art. Why? Because it's just your art. Why are you doing it? For the joy of doing it, the joy of the steps, discovering something. Going, I want to hook into that. And you can have several arts going at the same time.
Yeah. It's the process that is holy, not the product.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
I love that.
So tell us, Kirk, what brings you joy? I mean, what aside from helping other people, do you have an art that you practice in solitude?
Yeah, it's not in solitude as much. I'm a bit of a joy whore. So, I never wanted
that should be the title of your book.
Joy whore.
Because I never wanted to be a healer, but I've ended up in this position where I'm actually kind of just flowing into making it up. So the people I'm working with at the moment, literally, apart from doing the one-on-one sessions with them and understanding the stuff, and also setting the energy in the place, which is a big part of what I do every day. I set what's the vision, what's the current reality that's going on, and what's the bridge, what do we need to do, which has saved them a incredible amount of problems. I find the joy of these guys, and I actually love doing what other people's joy is. So one of them, it's playing golf. So we played at LACC a few weeks ago. I mean, that was just awesome. I'm not a great golfer, but I played in one of the best golf courses in America, and I loved it. And then I took another bloke horse riding. I went to a fun park. I was going to a fun park with another guy, and I just love people's joy. I think I'm just a joy whore for other people's joy, because I get a chance to connect with them and really see them. And when they rise into that, because I feel their pain too. That's a downside of the intuit in me, is I struggle to separate myself from the empath,
right?
Which I feel their pain, and it really hurts. And sometimes in the past I've taken a bit of it on, and it's really heavy on me. So getting them to their joy, I feel their joy. So I get a chance to, my joy is everybody else's joy, is what I'm discovering about myself. I still love knocking the ball about, even though I'm getting older, and I really enjoy engaging. My art at the moment, I'm learning to sing.
Oh, cool.
And I'm kind of enjoying that, because I didn't think I had it in me to sing. So.
Well, we do a jam every Saturday night right here in this room. Sometimes we rent out a jam space a couple miles away, but if you're ever in town, actually Eben has come.
It's an awesome time.
A couple times,
jam.
And it's an improvised jam. We got a lot of good musicians. This guy Jed over here is an incredible musician. He plays drums, bass, guitar, keys, sings, all that stuff. Eben actually has revealed himself as an awesome vocalist.
What?
Yeah.
Get the hell out of here.
Yeah, that deep voice.
Who would have thunk it with those pipes?
Right?
Yeah. There you go.
So you said earlier before that you have no social media, no kind of you're not promoting yourself on any platforms, because we're almost out of time, but we want to let you kind of plug anything if you want.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. I'm pretty much underneath the radar,
yeah,
because that's what serves the highest good. But we have set up a page for people to be able to get in contact with me, and that's what I do. I simply tune into if it serves the highest good and have a chat to them for 10 minutes, and if that serves the highest good, then we move forward from there. We create and adjust. So theluckbubble.com is where you can access just get a little bit of a blurb about what I do. But knowing what it's going to look like for you, you just got to talk to me. Just let me tune into it, and you'll see it. And by the end of it, you go, 99% of the time, people just go, holy shit, I don't know how you know that, but okay, I get it. Right. It's what's left in the middle of the table is just the truth.
Right.
Yeah. So theluckbubble.com.
Awesome. Amazing, man. I love that. I think we'll have to have Kirk back.
Yeah, that was an hour. Well, our shows are typically an hour. We could talk for a lot more.
Yeah.
Sure, we didn't get into your football career, your soccer.
Another time.
Yeah. Next time.
Or the lack of career.
Yeah, well, hey, you learned, I'm sure you learned some stuff doing that you apply now.
Well and truly.
So
the working with the team stuff really excites me, especially ex-athletes. Is there any ex-athletes out there? Guys, just man up and, give me a shout if you need to, because it's somewhere I can really help, because I see it very, very quickly with ex-athletes and soldiers.
Right. Maybe we can send some guys your way, because
absolutely,
we know a lot of guys that are struggling for the reasons you described about identity. So, well, hey, thanks for tuning in, you guys. This has been another episode of The Mindful Warrior.
Check us out on iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher. Go to the website, mindfulwarriorpodcast.com. Check out all the episodes. Find out what's happening new. Send us an email.
Comment.
Got some great fan mail coming in.
Yeah, we did. We got a message from a former athlete, a former football player who described in detail some of the health issues he's been dealing with, and we want to reach out to that guy and maybe have him on. So anybody who's out there dealing with some of the things that we're talking about, we're trying to get at it. We're trying to figure it out, and we want you to be involved. So get at us. Comments, send us a message, and we'll respond.
Love it.
Awesome.
That's
Thanks,
it.
guys.
Adios. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Mindful Warrior podcast, brought to you by Athletes for Care, a health and wellness resource for athletes of all ages. Don't miss out on Nate's books, Slow Getting Up and Fantasy Man,